Hello guys and welcome. Today we're gonna be going through the early game power to release series. I know this is taking a little bit of a life on its own, but this is important information and I like talking about these things. It does get, as I said in my previous video, a lot more convoluted as we go up in levels. So level 6 and 7 are okay. Like as I was going down to level 8, it's starting to get a little bit crazy. I'm probably gonna be making these videos into shorter parts, but I'm going to be uploading them a lot. I might have a little bit trouble after level 8 though, because as you can see, I'm starting to lose my mind. It looks more like a Sudoku than an actual tier list. But yeah, let's go through it. So what's going on level 6? On level 6, casters don't really get much, but they do get some minor buffs, apart from maybe one boy that we really like, and we made builds about, Wizard. Okay, so in level 6, you're about to, or you have already gone into Act 2. Act 2, there's a lot of dark-layered enemies that are more radiant damage vulnerable, we could say. So shadow and light is something that really is a theme in Act 2. So I would say that radiant damage is a little bit king here. But again, let's go through the tier list and we'll get into it a little bit more. So again, sorcerers hold the lead here because they can do so much. You know, before they could do 2 fireballs in 1 turn. Now they can do 2 fireballs in over 2 turns. Or if you cast haste on them beforehand, they can do 3 fireballs in 1 turn. And they start going a little bit crazy here. And the damage from them is very high, and the burst for them is really high. The reason why I value burst so high in these builds, guys, is because when you kill an enemy, they cannot do an action. So it's permanent CC. It's like stunning them forever, right? And if you can stun someone forever in your turn, that means you have an action economy on subsequent turns. So you have a massive advantage. Yeah, crowd control is good, but they can get out of it, right? So yeah. Let's look at the classes. Sorcerer is leading, and then we have bards, monks, and clerics. And let's look why let's see why they're so good at this point. So barbarians, let's start with barbarians again. We always start with barbarians. Barbarians do extra attack. Yes, they get their rage again. They're useful, but as you see, they've dropped down a level. Why? Why did they drop down a level from level 5? Because they are now effectively starting to get outshined. They don't get anything substantial at level 6. So while the other classes are scaling, the barbarians get like a minor buff from their subclass. So a minor buff cannot beat an extra feat, right? An extra feat is an extra damage point. Or it's 2 fireballs instead of, well, it's another turn of 2 fireballs. So again, hard to stay relevant at this point. Warlocks, they do get some minor buffs. The reason why they stay relevant is because they can still do fireball very reliably. And they do get some minor buffs. So they're okay. They're not too great either though. They're starting to lean towards the B tier. They're not as strong as they were at level 5. Then we have clerics. Now clerics at level 6, they start being king. Why are clerics king? Because of radiant damage. And when you're fighting shadows that are vulnerable to light damage, to radiant damage, and you can go light cleric and do your channel divinity, that can AoE blast them for something they are vulnerable to, and you can do it reliably twice a day now, because at level 6 you get an extra charge of channel divinity. Or if you go life cleric, you can do your AoE heal for 24 damage for the entire party, and if you have Hellrider's Pride and the Bless Ring from Volo, you can actually buff your entire party with your action or your bonus action and do it so reliably. I found Shadowheart was so useful in this point. Now let me just cue a video of what she can do. Shadowheart, do your thing. Everybody gets rage. You get rage. You get Blade Ward. You get a bless. You get a bless. And you get a bless. So fighters, again, the reason why fighters don't deteriorate as much as the barbarians is because they get an additional feat. That allows them to either boof. Why do I say boof instead of buff? So that they get an additional feat, and that means they can buff their strength modifier, their con modifier. They can get tough. they can, well, Tough is actually not that good, but Savage Attacker or Lucky or even Sentinel, it can make them a really valuable asset. And it can actually make them much better than the Barbarian at this point, because they still maintain their burst from level 5. So they can kill somebody on turn 1, and then they can actually keep an enemy near them and force them to focus themselves instead of their squishy members. Then again, we talked about Sorcerers. They can do Fireball twice every turn now. Well, twice every turn, maybe even thrice. And they can actually do 2 Fireballs on turn 1 and 2 Fireballs on turn 2 without any items, without any pre-haste buffs or anything. Or Potion of Haste. So again, they're probably the strongest class, and I'm in love with Sorcerers at this point in the game. You should have one in your party. And they're a charisma-based class. They're very good for a main character, because they can succeed in those persuasion checks while being very useful in combat. I don't feel like they miss out on anything at this point in the game. Then Paladins. Okay, also Sorcerers. They get effigy, they get resistances, they get extra damage from their subclass. So they do get a lot of buffing while having a lot of sorcery points at this point. Now, Paladins, they get their Aura of Protection. And while that means that they are not as strong as fighters in terms of burst anymore, because fighters got their feet, Paladins now become a reliable source of defense for your party, because they can protect it against spells. And they can protect people against losing their mind. So they have a lot of damage, they have a lot of burst, they can reliably do 3 attacks, guys. Remember that Pummel can be used for smites. So if all you have to do is change your weapon after every fight, they're still very valuable in the combat, because they can still do 3 attacks on the first turn with high level smites, right? Level 2 smites at this point on every attack. So they can do a lot of damage, and it's radiant, guys. And remember what I said about radiant damage. Shadows are vulnerable to radiant damage. Then we have monks. Monks, at this point, especially open palm monks, they start to go crazy, guys. Now, the shadow monk is okay because there's a lot of shadows that you can teleport to, but don't go monk of the elements, guys. But open palm monks, they can also do radiant damage at this point. So they get their wholeness of body, which gives them a free extra bonus action for 3 turns and heals them, right? And they have a lot of key points, so they can reliably dish out 6 attacks every turn. And those attacks can do radiant or psychic or necrotic damage. Go for radiant at this point, and you're gonna be squishing shadows with every attack you make, or every 2 attacks. So you can kill 3 shadows in 1 turn. And you do have a lot of movement speed. So monks at this point, they're S tier. They don't do as much damage as the sorcerer, but they're very good at it. And they can shut down a lot of enemies. And they don't require many resources to do so. Then we have bards. And now bards, they went from B to an S tier. What happened here? So at this point, bards, I'm talking about swords bards, they get their extra attack. And they can do... So remember, they get their Bardic Inspiration Bard every short rest since level 5. And now they get their extra attack on level 6. So they can do double Slashing Flourish. So that means they can attack the same target 4 times with their 2 attacks. So it's 2 attacks on 1 attack and 2 attacks on the other attack. On the extra attack. Because Slashing Flourish allows you to target the same person, the same enemy twice. Those attacks will have Sharpshooter. You can use Luck of the Far Realms on one of those attacks, and it applies to both of them. So you can actually guarantee crit on 2 attacks instead of 1. Broken. And they also have magic on them, right? So they can do those 4 attacks, bonus action another attack, reliably, so 5 attacks per turn, right? They're competing with monks, but they're ranged. And they can do, while monks can do a lot of damage, they can also do reliably damage, because they can actually get very easily high ground. So very useful, guys, very strong. At this point of the game, bards get an S, and they can also do magic like haste, which can boost their damage to 9 attacks per turn, guys. So monks at bards at level 6, if they haste themselves before combat, or with their bonus action, they can do 8 or 9 attacks every turn, reliably. Okay, then you will say they will run out of Bardic Inspiration, but your enemies will run out of HP as well, and then you can short rest and do it again in the next fight. So yes, you can do three hard fights relatively, and then short rest. But still, very, very, very strong, guys. Don't underestimate them. Bard on level 6. They have a really big power spike here. Then we have Ranger. Now, Rangers at level 6 get minor buffs to their pets. And generally, what they get is very weak. Yeah, you get an additional resistance. Yeah, just wear the bow of the Darkfire short bow, and you still get that resistance. You still get fire and cold resistance with one item. You don't need 6 levels in Ranger. Go Fighter. Don't go Ranger. Go Fighter. Fighter has burst. Fighters gets an extra feat. Rangers don't. Comparatively, they're not as tanky. They don't do enough damage. Yes, they get a little bit of initiative. We should give them that. Gloomstalker, yeah, don't go Hunter for at all. The Gloomstalker can give you initiative, and yeah, that could allow you to kill an enemy, which could be useful. But again, +3 is not as much. So definitely don't feel like Rangers are strong here, unfortunately. I know there's a lot of people that like Rangers, but they're not that strong. So, Rogue. Rogues, again, they start to fall off even more at this point. I was considering putting them at C tier, to be honest, together with the Ranger, because they still are only doing 3 attacks now. Yes, they get their uncanny dodge, but they have the damage of 1 attack every round. If you get multi-attacked by a fighter, you can only have the damage of 1 attack. You're effectively not doing anything. It just feels very underwhelming to be a rogue at this point in the game, and your sneak die are not very good. Like 3d6 is less than 1 attack from a great weapon master, what they do. So, not very good. But again, if you go with the scroll using route, you can use 4 or 5th level spells and do 2 attacks as well. So that can be very strong, and you can steal those scrolls, guys, right? So if you play it right, they can be A tier, but again, not the strongest class. But 2 attacks plus a high level scroll is good. And remember, scrolls can be used by any class, right? Usually in D&D, you can't do that. Like only a wizard can use a spell like a fireball with a scroll. But rogues can use, but in Baldur's Gate 3, you can use the scroll whatever your level is. So rogues are good just because of that. Then wizards, okay. Wizards were A, and they're still A, but they're very close to being S. They're like A+ at this point. So why are they A+, right? So wizards are A+ because they get Necromancer. And now you don't have to be a divination wizard to get a little bit of boost. Now you can be a big boy wizard. You can do summon undead, and you can summon an extra undead, right? So you have 2 skeletons now that do 2 attacks that do, if I remember correctly, 1d6 plus 1d10 necrotic, plus your proficiency plus 4, I think. So that's about +7, right? The problem with the skeletons and the zombies is that necrotic damage is not something that you can use against Act 2 enemies. They're very resistant to it. There are some fights where that would be useful, but it's not as good as it would be if you were doing radiant damage. So they're a little bit behind the Cleric just because of that. In a level playing field, they would be both S or A+. And then Druids. Druids get a buff here because Moon Druids can turn into an owlbear. Well, everybody can turn into an owlbear, but they can do it with their bonus action. But Spores Druid get their fungal infestation ability, and now they can start pumping out zombies like crazy. And that's very good, and that's very fun. It's a little bit hard to manage during combat, but they're very good. So let's look at the graph. So yes, as we can see, Sorcerer is leading. We have Cleric, Monk, and Bard following up with very high damage and very consistent damage and very high utility and burst. And yeah, we have Druid, Wizard, Paladin, Fighter following up, and then Barbarians and Rogues and Rangers follow last. So also remember, guys, Barbarians, their damage can be, their rage can be imitated by a good cleric, right? But they can do it for the entire party with one bonus action. And yeah, so it sucks, but when another class can do what you do for the entire party with a bonus action, you're probably not gonna be a good tier, right? Again, remember, Hellrider's Pride is probably the strongest item in the game until later on. Much later on. So let's look at the multi-class options. So we have the Cleric Fighter here, which now as a fighter you can choose to forego a feat at level 6 and pick a level in War Cleric. You will need some wisdom for that, but what is really good about this is it can allow you to consistently use your bonus action to do an extra attack. So you can do 5 attacks on the first turn with action surge. So it's attack, extra attack, action surge, attack, extra attack, bonus action, attack, if you have killed something with your Great Weapon Master. If not, you can use your Cleric extra attack. And, well, no, there's no end. Well, and you get some first level Cleric spells that you can use like Healing Word to bring up your allies. So, again, you increase in utility, you increase in DPS, you increase your consistency, and I just see this being better than getting another level in Fighter, to be honest. I'm not considering Cleric Deep in other classes like Barbarian because you should go for Fighter. Like Barbarians can do it anyway if they are going with Berserker Barbarian option. Yeah. But yeah, if you want to go Barbarian and you're level 6, take a level in Cleric. It's going to make you better. It's going to make you more reliable. Unless you're not a Berserker and you are, well, if you're a Berserker, if you're a Berserker, you don't need it. But if you're not a Berserker, definitely get one level. Then another 2 class combinations that I like is the Wizard Cleric. It does keep you behind on your Channel Divinity score, but you can get access to all Wizard spells and Cleric spells like Spirit Guardians, which do radiant damage, which is crazy good, guys. Then we have the Paladin with a level in Cleric, which, as we said, Paladins get attack and extra attack. So at this point in the game, you can do 3 attacks reliably if you have high enough of wisdom, right? You don't get the aura of protection, but you get extra bonus action attack maybe 2 or 3 times per day if you have 16 wisdom. And that can increase your burst damage a lot. And what did we say? Burst and damage is king in this game. Because if you can do a lot of damage, the enemy dies and they are permanently CC'd, crowd controlled. And finally, we have my favorite, which is a Storm Sorcerer, which now it starts to get a little bit more convoluted. It is 1 level on Wizard, 3 levels of Sorcerer, and 2 levels of Cleric. Now, I'm going to link my video here, but what you should guys keep an eye out on is that this can do a Lightning Bolt, max damage, then do a bonus action, another Lightning Bolt, while, yeah, so essentially they can do 2 or 3 even Lightning Bolts in a turn at level 6, and one of them will do max damage, and if the enemy is vulnerable, it's twice the damage. It can also do fireballs, guys, also, you know, without setup, right? So keep that in mind. Very, very, very strong. Probably the strongest class, in my opinion, at this point in the game. It does require a little bit of setup, but now it can do it by itself. It doesn't need support from the party. And just an honorable mention, guys, 3 levels of Barbarian and 3 levels of Rogue. You can rage and do 2 to 3 attacks every turn, 2 on the first turn, as you would do as a Barbarian. But yeah, now you can do enrage throw, double enrage throw fun. That's really fun. That's a really good way to play, but you don't get Great Weapon Master. Remember that, right? So your extra attacks don't do as much damage. So yeah, this is level 6, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you enjoy the content, please drop a subscribe. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. And I'll see you around, guys. Also, just a quick note. Starfield is coming out on Friday, 1st of September. And I kind of want to play it. So I'm thinking about making some content on that too. Please let me know if you would mind that. I'm thinking about doing a community poll. If you would really hate it if I did so, please voice it now. I don't want to do it if people really hate it. But if you actually want to see it, also voice that opinion, because I do want to play it. And I'll definitely return to Baldur's Gate because I'm a huge nerd on this on this game. But yeah, please let me know what you think, and thank you for being here, and thank you for watching. I'll see you around, guys.